Many of you have been asking me for an update on the Spain-Gibraltar border agreement situation. So in June, a historic agreement to resolve the border dispute was announced. It was supposed to come into force the start of October, but obviously we're now in December and nothing's happened. So it's been pushed back at the moment for 2 months, but I wanted to dig a bit deeper and give you all the updates. First of all, it wasn't a deal. What was announced was a framework without any text or solid agreements. People here in Gib were in the dark about what it meant, as nothing was actually announced. Although it was a step forward, the hugely unpopular Labour government probably wanted to try to push out some positive headlines much earlier than they should have done. What did happen in October was 2 of Spain's opposition parties, Vox and the Partido Popular, passed a motion to reject the agreement and push for sovereignty over Gibraltar. This was non-binding and not a veto. However, it puts pressure on the ruling Socialist Party in Spain, making political ratification of any deal harder. And it begins to show that support is fragile across the political spectrum in Spain. In the local Spanish area around Campo de Gibraltar, there's strong support for the deal as 15,000 Spanish workers cross the border to work each day and earn more than they do in Spain, and they obviously want this to continue. But there's also lots of locals around here who don't have a strong opinion either way. This is very different from the rest of Spain, where opinion is deeply divided, and even a slight swing in opinion toward the nationalist sovereignty argument could derail everything. There's also been tensions simmering in the background because the Spanish Navy have entered what Gibraltar considers its own territorial waters 3 times this year. The issue is that the Treaty of Utrecht, which gave the Rock of Gibraltar to the British in 1713, only gave them the rock, no territorial waters. Gibraltar applies modern international law, which state that a coastal territory automatically has up to 12 nautical miles of sea. However, Spain doesn't recognise this. But the biggest problem is unresolved sovereignty-sensitive issues, i.e. airport controls, custom arrangements, and Schengen border checks. If you've been following this, then you'll know that was the exact same story a year ago. I've spoken to many Spanish and Gibraltarians who've seen all this before. Lots of talk, then a delay, and then nothing happens. Specifically, Spain insists on carrying out the Schengen checks to prevent smuggling if the border is open, and also wants authority over visas, residency and asylum applications to new arrivals in Gibraltar, which Gibraltar says would affect their sovereignty. Gibraltar doesn't want Spain exercising any authority in its airport or ports, but that would be needed for a dual check system. But this delay is causing economic problems within Gibraltar. The property market has entered a sizable downturn as investors pause their plans to buy. The government's recent decision to pause residency applications has increased this trend. Tenants are also hesitant to sign long leases until there's clarity with the border. Rents have decreased 15 to 20% since 2022. Also, the fear of a hard border, which means everyone passing through would need visas and every document checked in details and all goods would be inspected, would trigger many expats living here to leave. The freedom of movement into Spain is one of the attractions of residing here. So what's the prognosis for any border agreement? The issue is the longer the delay, the weaker, less visible, less viable and more fragile the whole agreement looks, as negotiators can't agree anything and citizens on both sides start to lose confidence. The opposition parties in Spain use this delay as an excuse to say it's just not working and Spain should walk away. And every time a deadline is missed, Spain, Gibraltar and the EU, who's mediating this, look weaker in the eyes of the public, and none of those parties want that to continue long term. So if there was a snap Spanish election and those 2 parties either had a coalition or they came to power, then the deal would almost certainly be dead. If tensions over the disputed waters rise or if Spanish nationalist rhetoric dominates, then this may also derail the whole deal. But if no agreements can be found for the main sticking points, then the whole big announcement in June falls flat on its face. But there are solutions. One would be, instead of Spanish police being placed inside of Gibraltar, the EU could place its EU border agency Frontex to do all the checks and ensure compliance. Frontex is already in use along the southern Italian and Greek borders. but whether Gibraltar would still consider that a violation of its sovereignty would be a different matter. Another solution is that everyone coming to Gibraltar would use technology to get biometric pre-clearance from Spain in advance, so airport checks wouldn't be necessary. And a final solution would be that free movement is phased in gradually. So they could start off with residents and cross-border workers, and then a year later they could include tourists. So it's managed over time. There's 3 scenarios. We get the deal, we get a watered-down version of the deal, so all parties get to save face, but the underlying issues aren't resolved and sovereignty disputes continue, or negotiations collapse and we revert to a hard border. I don't think that will happen, as the EU doesn't want to lose face after all the effort it's put into the negotiations. But who knows? Please comment below. Let me know what you think of the situation. What do you think the likely scenario is going to be? Is it actually going to be a deal? If you've enjoyed this video, please give me a like and subscribe for more.